Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to When the Shift Hits the Fan. And you're here tonight again with the True Shifters. My name is Mark Jeffrey, and I'm here with my co-host, Linda Lehman. And I have to apologize for one thing here, is just before we started the show, I started sneezing for no apparent reason. So if I sneeze, I apologize ahead of time. So tonight we're talking about something I think a lot of people have an interest in, because we've been getting a lot of messages throughout the week about this particular type of thing. And you know, Linda, I think for a lot of people, relationships in general are just a tough thing. You know, business relationships, personal relationships, you know, friends, family, whatever it is, it's just tough because there just doesn't seem to be any hard and fast rules, right?
Oh, you're so correct, Mark. But you know what? I think sometimes we make it too hard. We try to force a relationship or push a relationship. You know, whether it's in business, you're trying to get somebody to do what you want them to do, or in personal relationships, you're trying to either make somebody, quote, like you or fall in love with you, or just force a relationship. And I think one key that we all need to realize is it doesn't have to be that hard. We don't have to make it hard. If we're just true to ourselves, it'll actually be easier.
Well, I think that, you know, we'll start off here maybe with being entrepreneurs and the relationships that we create, and then maybe move on to some personal stuff, because Linda and her husband Randy, they've been married for 30 years, and you know, we're going to talk a little bit about that relationship. But I want to start off with being an entrepreneur. It's really interesting for me. Like, over the last 7 or 8 years that I've been working online, it's kind of been an interesting journey for me, because there seems to be a suspension of reality online. It's almost like people can create a persona of who maybe they want to be, maybe they should be, but perhaps they are not in real life. And you know, it kind of comes out when you're watching feeds and different things like that on our social media, and you go, oh, well, this person is, you know, saying they're this type of a person, but as you see them travel through their real life and things that they post and different things that they do, you kind of see the cracks in that veneer and that makeup, as you will. And I think it's very hard for people. I mean, me, I'm always myself, and I have lots of flaws. I work on them daily, but I don't pretend that I don't. I don't pretend that I'm perfect. I don't even know why anybody would want to be perfect, because for me, that I would think that would be kind of boring. There'd be nothing to challenge you. It would just be, you know, a flat plane of nothingness. But I think people kind of get sucked into that, like you do on a soap opera. And that's what, you know, it's funny, we were just talking about this the other day about, gosh, this is becoming, you know, Peyton Place out here. A soap opera that's playing in front of you with opinions, and I'm in this business and it's the best, and don't eat this because it, you know, turns you into Mutant Ninja Turtles. I mean, it's wild out there, right, Linda?
It is wild, and it's hard. Just looking at it on the surface, it's hard to differentiate between the truth and the fabrication. And you know, Mark, that's where building true, genuine relationships comes from. Is I know that you're genuine and you're authentic, and I know that I can trust that, and I'm the same way. But I know someone just peeking into the entrepreneurial world, it's almost like an innocent child. You know, who do you believe? You want to trust
Mm-hmm.
and believe everybody and everything, and you know, the ice cream truck is going to come down the street and give you all the free ice cream that you could possibly eat, right?
Yep. It's so true. I was a babe in the woods when I first started. I thought everybody was the truth. I thought that was their real names. And we've talked about this before on previous shows. And I think what it is is, again, what Linda always brings up, what we talk about so much on our show is, that gut feeling and intuition. If it doesn't feel real, if it doesn't feel right, you're probably going to get hurt somewhere along the line. So, that doesn't mean stop. We never want you to just stop. We just, a little caution light comes on, and just, ask a few more questions and be more sure in what you're doing. So building relationships over the internet, to me, has been a study. And I kind of like it. I mean, at first I thought, there's no real people. But as I started, presenting more of myself on the social media and different things like that, I noticed that, different people that may have been watching and in the past and not responding to anything, just kind of out of the blue, I'll post something and somebody, I'm going, whoa, that's interesting. And that's how our show has been evolving as well. We started off saying, well, you know what, one person, 5 million people, whatever happens, happens. We're just here to express our opinions of how we see the world with a vast amount of experience and training. And we don't talk beyond what we know. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say, I can show you what Donald Trump does, because I can't, because I can't even get my hair like that. No, I know that was facetious. but I'm not going to say that. I just, yeah. It was funny because I was watching, I don't know, The Taste or something, and there's this little Chinese lady, and I know I go off in fantasy worlds, you guys, but she had this little thing saying, I know what I know, and they don't know what I know, so they don't know I know. And she was, crack whip on every one of the taste tests that came up, because she was just doing what she felt in her gut was the right thing to do, and always came out ahead. And basically that's what I do. If I meet a person either online, in person, or in a relationship, and I don't feel comfortable with it, and I think, Linda, you were right on the money with that. The very beginning of this is that, it has to be a two-way street. You have to be forgiving as well as you're taking. And I know, Linda, I want you to talk a lot about that tonight, because this was about relationships. And I really admire the relationship that you and Randy have. I have a few other friends that are like that have long-standing relationships. One of them are not even married. They've been together for something like 36 years. And I notice in watching you too as well, it's interesting that I know that you probably are aware of it, but maybe even not, that when touchy things kind of come up, or somebody kind of just a little bit steps over the bounds of, comfort zone, it's just a slight and gentle pushback that's really cool to watch, that nobody ever gets hurt. And I think that is obviously it had to have been developed over time.
Yeah, we had to test each other's boundaries, that's for sure. But you know what? That's the fun part of a new relationship. Is you have to test the waters. You got to see where those boundaries are. You got to see how far you can go and how far you'll allow the other person to go. But Mark, that comes from having a deep love and respect for yourself first. Because when you love yourself.
Yeah, that's really important. So listen up here, folks. This is a key to relationships right now.
Oh, it is. It's probably loving yourself first is the number one key to good relationships, whether it's personal relationship or whether it's a business relationship. You have to love yourself and respect yourself, because if you don't love yourself and if you don't respect yourself, there's no way that you can give that to somebody else, whether it's a business partner or a personal partner. You can't give it away. So that is the fundamental key right there, folks. If you don't get anything else out of this show or any of our other shows, get this. You have to love and respect yourself first before you can be successful in anything.
That's exactly right. And that's your biggest project, right? That should be your sole project for sure. But Linda, let me ask you something. We're talking about, being fearless about things. And I know in particularly in new relationships, when somebody, they're very afraid. Like you said, testing the boundaries. And I mean, me, I walk right through the boundaries. I'm just like a bull in a china shop. But some people are afraid. They're afraid to ask for maybe what they need because they feel like they may offend the other person, and I think it comes down to, you have to have confidence in yourself, right? You got to know what you want and need. And loving yourself is part of that. Having that respect for yourself is asking other people for what you need. But I think that most people, though, are really timid in that regard. And I don't know, Linda, can you think of any way that we can maybe help people through that process?
Yeah, that's a tough one, Mark, but you have to kind of step back and ask yourself what you're really afraid of. And what is the absolute worst thing that could happen? I mean, you could be timid and shy and afraid to make a mistake or afraid to ask the wrong question or say the wrong thing. But again, it goes back to what you think and feel about yourself. I mean, if you don't think you're worthy, that's another big one. If you don't think that you're worthy of this person loving you or this business relationship working out, then you're right. It's not going to work out, and you're going to give in to that fear. In a relationship, Mark, I like to look at fear almost as a curiosity. I wonder what would happen if I said this.
Yeah, exactly. A curiosity. I mean, but the other thing too is, like, I think you can get yourself in a space where you can put up a protective banner, and I don't think this is going to hurt anything. Linda, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're wondering something about someone, like let's say you wanted to, maybe you liked action movies, and a guy kept taking your romance movies, and you just weren't into that, but you kept going. And one day you could just, talking about something else or whatever, commercial comes on and you say, hey, have you ever gone to any of these movies like this? Like, would that, Joe, Combat Joe played in or whatever? To get an opinion. Then you'll get an answer of, no, I hate those things, to, yeah. And you said, oh, well, you know what, I wouldn't mind going. And, all of a sudden you're over a hurdle, right?
Exactly.
You don't have to go, why don't you ever take me to? Because some people are like right in your face about things, and I think that's when they get rejection because the other person gets hurt, and then they retaliate in whatever way they can to protect themselves, and, then it's a full-on food fight, right?
Oh, absolutely. Anytime that you approach either a difficult situation or even a curiosity situation, pointing a finger or blaming, it's going to immediately put the other person on the defensive. So you're right, Mark. If you can approach it from the perspective of even, as you said, getting an opinion, or if it's a touchy situation, and you may have noticed this with us, it's more of an approach of how this is making me feel. When you say something like this, I feel like this, or I interpret it as that, or approaching it in a way that you explain how they can maybe even help you understand where they're coming from. So you're opening up the dialogue to be a two-way street where you're not blaming them or making them feel like something is their fault, because that's another huge game in relationships that we never want to play, and that is trying to decide who's right and who's wrong.
Yeah, who's right and who's wrong, and who's, assuming something as well. I know I used to say to Alan, like when something he said or did, I just said, oh my God, I just felt a knife on my back. Did you mean to throw it? I think it was just kind of like those stopping your tracks, okay, what just happened here? And it was just said in, that was the way we would, oh, wait a second. it was just a stopgap in it without saying, turning around and throwing the pot at him or something, or saying, you never listen to me, and we get into those wild and wacky ways. And you know what, men, we're not saying women are just like this. Men are like this too, but they do the brood more than they do the, get in your face type of thing about it. They'll do the brood stuff, like they'll go all quiet, and then you got to go picking at it, going, oh, honey. Did I hurt your feelings? And then it makes them mad because then the food fight. Okay, so Linda, 30 years, and a lot of things have happened. We know from past episodes, but maybe some people, are just tuning in for the first time tonight. But we know it hasn't been, just plain sailing across smooth waters the entire time. It was between you. It's always been. You came through some tough times. You come through some amazing transitions in your life, including this past year. And I got to say something about Randy. He's not on the line here tonight, but there's a lot of. I work with women who have had breast cancer and had certain surgeries and different things like that, and the scars that have been left on our bodies. And many men have just walked away because they're a perfect Barbie doll, just deflated, and they just don't know how to deal with it anymore. They're afraid too, and I think in this situation where you do have the scars and you're not the woman you were before, and that's just, there's no way to look around that. That's just the reality of it. That we as women kind of think there's something wrong with us because we're silly that way sometimes, and men don't know how to respond because they know changes have happened. They don't know how you feel about it. Linda, let's talk about that, the talk that has to happen for relationship to be sustainable over time.
Well, you're right. We've been through a lot, and we've been through, I want to say, a marvelous transition this last year. And the key to the communication, because as everybody, our listeners know, is I've fought and won the breast cancer battle. Yes, I have scars. Through it all, Randy's been incredibly supportive, and I asked him. We talked about it. What would it be like to you if maybe I just didn't have reconstruction, or how would you feel about this? But Mark, I think that because we have spent so much time together, and we have such a strong relationship, we already each knew the answers to the questions. It was no big deal, and that's because we recognize each other for the spirit that we are. Where the body is just there, and both of our bodies have been through many changes. I think last year I posted a picture of our a wedding picture, and I'm this real slim, slender Twiggy, and Randy's this nice, slender-looking guy with lots of big, thick, full black hair. Now, everybody who knows us knows that Randy's bald on top now, and it's real salt and pepper. And, my hair color goes through many changes. It's just the way it is. But through it all, Mark, I know that those are tough conversations, and I know sometimes in relationships that really haven't built the foundation of love, and I go back to respect of the individual, those conversations may not work out so well. And it may be, again, because you're holding back. I mean, when you really want to be in a true loving relationship with someone, there is no holding back. You got to tell it like it is. If you're feeling a certain way, you speak up, but you don't do it in an accusatory way to the other person. You do it in a conversational way to share your feelings and share more of yourself. And Mark, we also touched on this at the beginning, listening to your gut, listening to that intuition. Your intuition will guide you because it's picking up signals from the other person and feeding those signals to you. So without even speaking, you can tell what the other person is feeling, and you can communicate how you're feeling, and you can also allow that intuition to kind of guide you, left or right or straight ahead. Randy and I have always communicated straight on. I don't really pull any punches, and neither does he when it comes to discussing situations. I mean, we don't punch bag each other. I don't want anybody to get the wrong impression.
Yeah,
although it's kind of fun if we put on boxing gloves and had some, play, because that's important too.
I'll get you in a pillow fight next time I'm down there. We'll see. We'll see how that turns out. We'll have one of those. We'll put the questions in the pot and pull out the pillows, which could be fun for people. That's another way. And I think too, we as women, I think a lot of times we lead into things the wrong way for men. Like, we got to talk. Now, I know that as soon as that happens, every hair on a man raises, going, oh no.
Oh, no.
If we just broach things like I used to do stuff like, man, I'm making myself crazy. If I don't talk about something here, I'm going to go, whacked. And again, it was just an indicator of what. It could be anything. And, it was just a stopgap in making everybody go, okay, well, all right, let's talk. It was just an opening. But, when we do stuff like, oh, we've got to talk, we say things and our mood presents itself through our voice, and it puts everybody on guard, and then everybody, again, it's just not that vibration isn't vibrating at the right level to get any satisfaction out of it. You just know right off the bat it's going to end badly. And I know when I've started stuff like that, I'm going, oh man, I've got to diffuse this because I just walked in a puddle I shouldn't have. Boy, I'm mixing metaphors, aren't I? But
you're doing a great job tonight.
But I think I think when it's right, you have to take the time to find the right people. And sometimes I think we get to a certain age, or we look for, sometimes we make the mistake of looking for our father, and that's not quite, good for us. We make a lot of mistakes in relationships, but sometimes we're afraid to give up when we should, and sometimes we give up too soon when we shouldn't. And I think it's so complicated. We couldn't certainly go through a half an hour and talk about everything that could, should, would go wrong or right in any way, shape, or form. But I wanted you to see inside a relationship. It was more important for me tonight because there's relationships I see, and I know you all know that are hollow. You don't see the love there anymore. You see the convenience of a relationship, whatever it might be monetary, it might be the kids, because the words they use are not loving anymore. Like Linda said, when they talk, but it's not to hurt the other person. Even though I know on occasion, Randy and Linda they're not saints on earth. We don't want anybody to have that impression. But they are very cognizant of, a stab might come, but the retort will not be quick. It would be thoughtful, and that was interesting to me. I don't know how y'all manage that. I really don't. I guess over time, but how do you kind of walk in that from the very beginning? Was it always like that? Was it always that easy? Or, did you tear it up a couple of times and then find a way to feel each other out?
Yes.
Thank God. I don't have to anoint you for sainthood.
No, please don't. Because that pillar would be a long fall. It's going to hurt. And we to this day, even after 30 years, we obviously we don't get it perfect. And there have been some Donnybrook disagreements. You know, one of the things that I love about Randy is that he is an individual person, and I respect that. We do not share the same opinions on many things. And especially, I think, when our girls were young, we disagreed quite a bit on different ways that they should be raised. So it wasn't perfect, but again, we learned how the other person handled anger and frustration, and that came by trial and error. You know, I learned, oops, maybe I shouldn't do I think we need to talk about this in the middle of a Razorback football game.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not
Yeah.
going to have his attention. No two ways about it. I'm not going to have his attention. But again, I had to learn that the hard way, because I had to step on my own toes first. But again, because I knew that this relationship was worth hanging on to and worth fighting for, I learned the lessons, and Randy learned the lessons. And so we learned about those times when we were about to go over the line and push too far, and we could back up. And, you know, one thing that we both learned is if we have allowed this disagreement or this difference of opinion to escalate to a certain point where both of us are just feeling the anger and the blood pressure just skyrocketing, we both now can recognize that and choose to back off. But then we know that we can come back and revisit it when we've both calmed down, and we can sit down and usually laugh about it, or, you know, one of us will step forward and say, hey, you know, sorry I lost my cool. That's not really the direction I wanted this to go. Here is what I was really thinking about. What do you think about that? But it took some time. And again, Mark, tuning into that intuition, you know, if I have something bugging me, sometimes I may not approach it immediately. If I'm getting a signal from Randy, maybe he doesn't feel good, or maybe he is focused on something else. Because, ladies, let's just put this on the table. Men will agree with this. When they're truly focused on one thing, they don't multitask well.
No.
So
don't try to make them do it, you know, because then that's just frustrating for them, because they just can't attend to the job. And you know, from my perspective, I mean, another thing that's true, in fact, is that men are proud beings, and they are the protector of their women and children. Still, you know, that instinctual need to do those things. So, you know, when we sometimes knock them down for something that maybe, you know, like you said, Linda, maybe in thinking it, you go, geez, that was like, didn't really matter at all, or that wasn't as significant. I was tired, I hadn't eaten all day, and that guy at work just drove me crazy, and you brought it home with you. I mean, we're all human beings, and we're going to do that. We all are. In every relationship, from our kids to people we work with, business partners, loving relationships, and even maybe those frenemies. We're all going to make mistakes. And I think that, again, loving yourself, forgiving yourself, and being charitable and generous gets you through a whole lot of crap. I'm going to tell you that. I mean, that's my last words for tonight, because we're coming up at the end of the half hour again. I can't even believe we talked for that long a time or short a time. Or it's just a big subject. But that's for me. I always know that love gets me a heck of a lot further than being stubborn. So, Linda, I'll give you the last little part of this here.
Oh, sure. I want to go back to a quote that I dearly love from Wayne Dyer, and it fits our conversation tonight. And what Wayne said was, when the choice is to be right or to be kind, always make the choice that brings peace. And you know what? If you do that, just check your words. You know, do I want to be right, or do I want to be kind? Pick the kind, and your relationship will reward you tenfold. I promise.
Well, I certainly like that, and yeah, you know what? We'll talk a little bit more about this, and I think you'll get to know us on the show. We kind of wander around through things that are happening in our lives, and sometimes we thought we're going to take one direction on our show and end up in a totally different place through just our conversation. Because, friends, we're here every week just talking about what's happening in our lives, what works, what doesn't work, and how we make it through it, and how, for the most part, I know both of us have the most amazing lives, and we like sharing that, and how we stick handle through the muck and come out smelling pretty good on the other side. So for Mark here in Canada, good night, everyone.
And from Linda down here in Florida, good night.